Ketavan, just how has the White House been describing this telephone conversation and the progress that was made during the course of it?
Serious and substantive. That's how a senior administration official described that phone call between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. But that administration official also insisted that Joe Biden was very straightforward with his Russian counterpart. Basically, the U.S. president explained to the Russian president, according to the White House, that there was really two paths for the United States to go down. One was the path of diplomacy, the path that would lead to de-escalation at that Ukrainian border. And then there was the path of deterrence, one that would have very serious and high costs and consequences on Russia should Russia choose to go ahead with invading Ukraine. And according to the White House, Joe Biden told Vladimir Putin that the choice really was up to Russia to determine how it wanted to behave, what actions it was going to take, and that would decide whether the U.S. would follow diplomacy or deterrence. That said, the conversation was pretty short, and the two men really spoke about putting their concerns, putting everything out on the table. No negotiating in public. That's the message from the White House. No more details on really what those two men talked about directly, but the White House insists that they are still very closely monitoring the situation at the Ukrainian border, still very concerned with the situation and with Russia's behavior at the border. And they say that they will continue to monitor that and continue to urge Russia to de-escalate tensions at the Ukrainian border.
Ketavan, just where do we go from here? How can we build on these discussions with more talks scheduled in the very first weeks of the new year?
Yes, you're going to have a few days of talks between Russia, the United States, and even more widely NATO and the OSCE. It's going to start on January 9th, January 10th. The US and Russia will be meeting, officials will be meeting, and then on January 12th, it will be Russia and NATO, and then Russia and the OSCE on January 13th. And really what this call was about was to set the conditions, set the tone and tenor for these upcoming talks, according to that White House official. And these talks are really where the negotiations are going to be getting down to the nitty-gritty, to those demands that the Russians have made public, even though the two leaders, Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin, and the two sides really all know and all agree that there are areas where they can work together, where they can make some progress through diplomacy. And they also all agree that there are areas where that progress won't be able to be made, and an agreement is simply impossible, in the words of the Americans. The White House saying that the Russians know exactly what those areas are, which ones are possible, which ones are really non-starters, but they are still willing to negotiate, to use diplomacy, and to hold off on those sanctions if the Russians behave and act in good faith.
Ketavan Gorjestani, our correspondent in Washington, thank you very much.